Time travelers meet aliens in parallel universe. The year was 2147, and the world had become a place of marvels. Cities floated above the clouds, their glass towers reflecting the sunlight like giant diamonds. Cars zipped through the air without a sound, and robots worked alongside humans in perfect harmony. But the greatest achievement of all was hidden deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a secret lab known only to a handful of people. This was the home of Project Kronos, humanity's first attempt to conquer time itself. Dr. Emily Carter stood in the center of the lab, her fiery red hair tied back in a loose ponytail. Her sharp green eyes scanned the room, taking in the sleek silver time machine that dominated the space. It was a pod-shaped device, surrounded by a swirling vortex of energy that crackled and hummed like a living thing. Emily had spent years designing it, pouring every ounce of her brilliance into its creation. Tonight was the night they would test it for the first time. "Jack, are the stabilizers calibrated?" Emily called out, her voice echoing off the lab's metal walls. Jack Thompson, her trusted engineer and best friend, was crouched beside the machine, a wrench in one hand and a holographic tablet in the other. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man with messy brown hair and a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow. "Almost there, he replied, his deep voice calm and steady. "Just give me a sec." Emily tapped her foot impatiently. "We don't have a sec, Jack. The energy levels are spiking. If we don't launch soon, the whole thing could blow." Jack smirked, his blue eyes twinkling with mischief. "Relax, document. When have I ever let you down?" Emily rolled her eyes, but couldn't help smiling. Jack had a way of diffusing tension, even in the most stressful situations. He was the only one who could keep up with her relentless pace, and she trusted him more than anyone. Finally, Jack stood up and wiped his hands on his grease-stained overalls. "All right, stabilizers are good to go. Let's fire this baby up." Emily nodded and turned to the control panel. Her fingers flew over the holographic interface, entering the final sequence of commands. The machine's hum grew louder, and the energy vortex began to spin faster, casting eerie shadows across the room. "Here we go," Emily whispered, her heart pounding with excitement. "Initiate launch sequence in 3, 2, 1. She pressed the button, and for a moment, everything seemed to go according to plan. The machine's energy field stabilized, and the vortex began to form a perfect circle. But then, without warning, the lights flickered and the ground shook violently. Alarms blared, and the control panel lit up with warning messages. "Emily, what's happening?" Jack shouted, his voice barely audible over the noise. "I don't know," Emily replied, her hands flying over the controls. "The system's overloading. Jack, get out of there." But it was too late. A blinding flash of light filled the room, and when it faded, the time machine was gone, and so was Jack. Emily stared at the empty spot where the machine had been, her chest heaving as she tried to catch her breath. "Jack?" she whispered, her voice trembling. She ran to the spot, her boots clanging against the metal floor, but there was no sign of him. Just a faint shimmer in the air, like the afterimage of a dream. Her mind raced. Where had he gone? Had the machine worked, or had it failed catastrophically? She grabbed the tablet Jack had been using and began scrolling through the data. The readings were chaotic, but one thing was clear. The machine hadn't just sent Jack through time. It had opened a portal to another dimension. Emily's hands shook as she realized the truth. Jack wasn't just lost in time. He was somewhere else, and she had no idea how to bring him back. Little did she know, Jack's journey was just beginning. In a world far beyond her imagination, he was about to encounter beings that would change everything, not just for him, but for all of humanity. And the key to his return lay hidden in a secret the aliens had guarded for millennia. But that's a story for another time. For now, Emily had work to do. She had to find a way to bring Jack home before it was too late. Jack groaned as he opened his eyes, his head pounding like a drum. The ground beneath him was soft, almost spongy, and the air smelled faintly metallic, like the inside of an old spaceship. He blinked, trying to clear his vision, and when he finally focused, his breath caught in his throat. The sky above him was a deep, swirling purple, streaked with hues of pink and gold. Two suns hung in the sky, one large and blazing, the other smaller and cooler, casting an eerie double shadow across the landscape. Towering crystal-like trees surrounded him, their translucent branches shimmering in the light. The ground was covered in a strange, moss-like substance that glowed faintly with every step he took. "Where am I?" Jack muttered, his voice hoarse. He pushed himself up, his muscles aching, and looked around. This wasn't Earth. That much was obvious. But if it wasn't Earth, then where was it? And how had he gotten here? As he stumbled forward, his boots sinking slightly into the glowing moss, he heard a sound, a soft, melodic hum that seemed to come from all around him. He froze, his heart racing. The hum grew louder, and then he saw them. Figures emerged from the crystal trees, their movements smooth and graceful. They were tall, at least 7 feet, with shimmering blue skin that seemed to ripple like water. Their limbs were long and slender, and their eyes glowed with an inner light like tiny stars. They didn't walk so much as glide, their feet barely touching the ground. Jack's first instinct was to run, but his legs felt like lead. "Hi," he said weakly, raising his hands in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. One of the aliens stepped forward, its head tilting slightly as it studied him. Its mouth didn't move, but a voice echoed in Jack's mind, deep and resonant. "Asterisk, you are not from this place." Asterisk. Jack blinked, startled. "You can talk? I mean, not talk, but you know what I mean?" The alien's glowing eyes seemed to soften, almost like it was amused. "Asterisk, we do not speak as you do. We communicate through thought. You are a traveler, are you not?" Asterisk. Jack nodded slowly, still trying to process what was happening. "Yeah, I guess you could say that. My name's Jack. I didn't mean to end up here. My machine kind of malfunctioned." The alien tilted its head again, as if considering his words. "You are a time traveler," it said, not as a question, but as a statement. Asterisk, "We have been waiting for you." Asterisk. Jack's eyes widened. "Waiting for me? What do you mean?" The alien didn't answer directly. Instead, it gestured for him to follow. "Asterisco come. The Council of Elders will explain." Asterisk. Jack hesitated, glancing back at the spot where he'd landed. He didn't have much of a choice. He was stranded in an alien world with no way home. Taking a deep breath, he nodded and followed the alien, his mind racing with questions. As they walked, Jack couldn't help but notice how alive everything felt. The air seemed to hum with energy, and the ground pulsed faintly beneath his feet, as if the planet itself was breathing. The aliens moved silently beside him, their glowing eyes occasionally glancing in his direction. Finally, they reached a massive structure that looked like it was made of pure light. Its walls shimmered and shifted, reflecting the colors of the sky. Inside, a group of aliens sat in a circle, their eyes fixed on Jack as he entered. One of them, taller than the rest with a crown-like structure on its head, spoke. "Asterisk, you have come far, Jack Thompson. We have much to discuss." Asterisk. Jack swallowed hard, his throat dry. "Yeah, I got a lot of questions too. Starting with why am I here?" The elder's eyes glowed brighter, and Jack felt a strange warmth spread through his chest. "You are here because the universe has chosen you," it said. Asterisk, "but the answers you seek will not come easily. First, you must prove yourself." Asterisk. Jack's heart sank. "Prove myself? How?" The elder's gaze was unwavering. Asterisk, "By facing a challenge unlike any you have ever known. A test of mind, body, and spirit." Asterisk. Jack clenched his fists, his determination rising. "All right," he said, his voice steady. "Bring it on." But as he stood there, surrounded by beings far more advanced than anything he'd ever imagined, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The aliens knew something big, and they weren't ready to tell him yet. Little did Jack know, the test they had in store for him would change everything. And the key to his survival and his return home lay hidden in a secret that even the aliens feared to reveal. But that's a story for another time. For now, Jack had a challenge to face and a mystery to unravel. The Council of Elders chamber was unlike anything Jack had ever seen. The walls seemed to be made of liquid light, shifting and flowing like a river of stars. The air was thick with an energy that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. The elders themselves sat in a semicircle, their glowing eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made him feel like a bug under a microscope. The tallest elder, the one with the crown-like structure on its head, spoke first. Its voice echoed in Jack's mind, deep and resonant. Asterisk, you have come to us from a distant time, Jack Thompson. Your presence here is no accident. Asterisk Jack shifted uncomfortably, his boots sinking slightly into the soft, glowing floor. Yeah, about that. I didn't exactly plan this trip. My machine kind of blew up. Or something. I'm not really sure what happened. The elder's eyes glowed brighter, and Jack felt a strange warmth spread through his chest. Asterisk, your machine did not fail, Jack. It brought you here because we summoned you. Asterisk Jack's jaw dropped. Wait, what? You summoned me? What? The elder leaned forward slightly, its shimmering blue skin rippling like water. Asterisk, we have watched your species for millennia. You are a curious race, full of potential but also prone to destruction. Your discovery of time travel was inevitable, but we needed to see if you were ready for such power. Asterisk Jack frowned, crossing his arms over his chest. So what? This is some kind of test? You brought me here to see if I'm worthy or something. The elder nodded slowly. Asterisk precisely. Time travel is not a tool to be wielded lightly. We needed to know if your species could handle such responsibility. Asterisk Jack ran a hand through his messy hair, his mind racing. Okay, let me get this straight. You're saying you brought me here to test me? To see if humans are ready for time travel? Yes, the elder replied simply. Asterisk, and now you must prove yourself. Asterisk Jack's heart pounded in his chest. Prove myself how? What do I have to do? The elder gestured with one long, slender arm, and the room around them shifted. The walls dissolved into a swirling vortex of light, and suddenly, Jack found himself standing in the middle of a holographic representation of Earth. He could see cities, oceans, and continents, all glowing with a soft blue light. This is your world, the elder said. Asterisk, but it is also a puzzle. Your task is to prevent a great disaster without causing another. You must use your knowledge, your empathy, and your ingenuity to find a solution. Asterisk Jack stared at the hologram, his mind spinning. What kind of disaster are we talking about? The elder's eyes glowed brighter. Asterisk a war. A conflict that will tear your world apart unless you intervene. But be warned, Jack. Every action has consequences. Choose wisely. Asterisk Jack swallowed hard, his throat dry. All right, he said, his voice steady. Let's do this. He stepped closer to the hologram, his eyes scanning the glowing map. He could see the hot spots, the places where tensions were highest, where the conflict was most likely to begin. His mind raced as he tried to think of a solution. He couldn't just stop the war. He had to find a way to prevent it without causing another disaster. Hours passed, or maybe it was minutes. Jack couldn't tell. Time seemed to blur as he worked, his hands moving quickly over the holographic controls. Finally, he found solution. It wasn't perfect, but it was the best he could do. He took a deep breath and pressed the final button. The hologram shifted, showing a new timeline. The war was averted, and the world was at peace. Jack let out a sigh of relief, his shoulders sagging with exhaustion. The elder nodded, its glowing eyes filled with approval. Asterisk, you have done well, Jack Thompson. You have proven that your species is capable of great wisdom and compassion. Asterisk Jack grinned, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. So does that mean I pass? Can I go home now? The elder's expression grew serious. Asterisk, not yet. There's one more thing you must know. A secret that has been hidden from your kind for millennia. It is the reason we brought you here, and it is the key to your return. Asterisk Jack's heart skipped a beat. What is it? The elder leaned closer, its voice dropping to a whisper in Jack's mind. Asterisk, the truth about time travel and the danger it poses to the universe. But that is a story for another time. Asterisk. Before Jack could respond, the room began to dissolve around him, the walls melting into a swirling vortex of light. He felt himself being pulled away, the elder's glowing eyes fading into the distance. And then, everything went black. When Jack opened his eyes, he was no longer in the council chamber. He was standing in a vast, empty plain, the twin suns casting long shadows across the ground. In the distance, he could see a massive structure, a tower made of pure light, reaching high into the sky. Jack's heart raced as he realized where he was. This was the final test. The tower held the answers he sought, and the key to his return home. But first, he had to reach it, and standing between him and the tower was something he never could have imagined. Something alive, something dangerous, and it was coming straight for him. Back in the year 2147, Emily Carter was a woman on a mission. The lab was eerily quiet, the hum of the machines the only sound breaking silence. Her fiery red hair was a mess, and dark circles hung under her eyes, but she didn't care. Sleep could wait. Jack was out there somewhere, and she was determined to bring him back. She sat hunched over the control panel, her fingers flying across the holographic interface. The data from the time machine's last readings filled the screen, a chaotic jumble of numbers and symbols that made no sense to anyone but her. Mia Rodriguez, her young and brilliant assistant, stood beside her, sipping from a mug of coffee that had long gone cold. "Anything yet?" Mia asked, her voice tinged with hope. Emily shook her head, her green eyes narrowing in frustration. Nothing concrete. The machine didn't just send Jack through time. It opened a portal to another dimension. But I can't figure out how to reverse it. It's like trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing. Mia leaned closer, her dark eyes scanning the data. What if we tried rerouting the energy flow? Maybe we can create a bridge between dimensions and pull them back. Emily paused, considering the idea. It's risky. If we mess up, we could destabilize the entire system. But it might be our only shot. She turned to Mia, a spark of determination in her eyes. Let's do it. Start recalibrating the energy matrix. I'll work on the dimensional coordinates. Mia nodded, her fingers already moving across her own holographic screen. On it, for hours, they worked in silence, the tension in the room palpable. Every now and then, Emily would glance at the empty spot where the time machine had been, her heart aching with worry. Jack had been her partner, her best friend, for as long as she could remember. She couldn't lose him, not like this. Finally, Mia broke the silence. "Emily, I think I've got something." Emily spun around, her heart racing. "What is it?" Mia pointed to a series of equations on her screen. "If we channel the energy through the quantum stabilizers, we might be able to create a temporary bridge. But we'll need a massive power source to sustain it." Emily's mind raced. The main reactor. It's the only thing powerful enough. But if we overload it, the whole lab could go up in flames. Mia finished, her voice grim. Emily clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. "We don't have a choice. Jack's out there, and we're running out of time." Mia nodded, her expression resolute. "Let's do it." They worked quickly, their movements precise and deliberate. The lab's main reactor hummed to life, its energy flowing through the quantum stabilizers and into the dimensional bridge. The air crackled with electricity, and the walls seemed to vibrate with power. Emily stood at the control panel, her finger hovering over the final button. "This is it," she whispered. "Ready." Mia took a deep breath. "Ready." Emily pressed the button, and the room was filled with a blinding light. The dimensional bridge opened, a swirling vortex of energy that pulsed with an otherworldly glow. Emily's heart pounded as she stared into the vortex, hoping against hope that Jack would come through. But instead of Jack, something else emerged. A figure stepped out of the vortex, its form shimmering and indistinct. It was humanoid, but its features were blurred, as if it wasn't entirely solid. Emily and Mia stared in shock as the figure raised a hand, its voice echoing in their minds. Asterisk, you should not have done that. Asterisk, Emily's blood ran cold. But what are you? The figure's form solidified, revealing a face that was both familiar and alien. Its eyes glowed with an inner light, and its voice was deep and resonant. Asterisk, I'm a guardian of the dimensions. You have disrupted the balance, and now you must face the consequences. Asterisk, Emily's mind raced. We didn't mean to cause any harm. We're just trying to bring our friend back. The guardian's gaze softened slightly. Asterisk, your intentions may be pure, but your actions have consequences. The bridge you have created is unstable. If it collapses, it could tear a hole in the fabric of reality. Asterisk, Mia's eyes widened. What can we do to fix it? The guardian's expression grew serious. Asterisk, you must close the bridge. But be warned, once it is closed, you will lose all connection to the dimension where your friend is trapped. Asterisk, Emily's heart sank. No, there has to be another way. The guardian shook its head. Asterisk, there is no other way. The choice is yours, but you must decide quickly. The bridge is collapsing as we speak. Asterisk, Emily looked at Mia, her mind racing. They couldn't leave Jack stranded, but they couldn't risk destroying reality either. It was an impossible choice. But before she could decide, the guardian's form began to fade. Time is running out, it said, its voice growing faint. Asterisk, choose wisely. Asterisk, and then it was gone. Emily stared at the swirling vortex, her heart pounding. She had to make a decision, and fast. But little did she know, the consequences of her choice would reach far beyond anything she could have imagined. And Jack, trapped in a distant dimension, was about to face a challenge that would test him in ways he never thought possible. But that's a story for another time. For now, Emily had a choice to make, and the fate of two worlds hung in the balance. Jack stood frozen in the vast, empty plain, his eyes locked on the massive tower of light in the distance. It shimmered like a beacon, calling to him, but between him and the tower was something that made his blood run cold. A creature, no, a being, was moving toward him, its form shifting and changing with every step. One moment, it looked like a shadowy wolf, the next like a towering humanoid with glowing red eyes. It was as if it couldn't decide what it wanted to be, and that made it even more terrifying. Jack's heart pounded in his chest as he took a step back, his boots crunching on the strange, glowing moss beneath him. Okay, Jack, he muttered to himself. Think, what would Emily do? The creature let out a low, guttural growl that seemed to vibrate through the ground. Jack's mind raced. He had no weapons, no tools, nothing but his wits. He glanced around, looking for anything he could use to defend himself, but the plain was empty except for the tower and the creature. The creature lunged, its form shifting into a massive, clawed beast. Jack dove to the side, rolling across the ground as the creature's claws slashed through the air where he had just been. He scrambled to his feet, his breath coming in short, panicked gasps. "All right, buddy," he said, trying to sound braver than he felt. "Let's talk this out. I'm not here to hurt you." The creature paused, its glowing red eyes narrowing as if considering his words. For a moment, Jack thought it might actually listen, but then it let out a deafening roar and charged again. This time, Jack didn't move fast enough. The creature's claws grazed his arm, sending a searing pain through his body. He cried out, clutching his arm as he stumbled backward. Blood dripped from the wound, staining the glowing moss beneath him. "Okay, new plan," Jack muttered through gritted teeth. "Run." He turned and sprinted toward the tower, his legs pumping as fast as they could. The creature roared behind him, its footsteps shaking the ground. Jack didn't dare look back. He focused on the tower, its light growing brighter with every step. But as he got closer, he realized something was wrong. The tower wasn't just made of light. It was surrounded by a barrier of some kind, a shimmering wall of energy that pulsed with a faint hum. Jack skidded to a stop, his chest heaving as he stared at the barrier. "You gotta be kidding me," he gasped. The creature was closing in fast, its growls growing louder. Jack's mind raced. He had to get through the barrier, but how? He reached out a hand, hesitating for a moment before touching the energy wall. A jolt of electricity shot through his arm, and he yanked his hand back with a curse. "Think, Jack, think," he muttered, his eyes darting around for any clue. Then he noticed something, a small, glowing panel embedded in the ground near the base of the barrier. It looked like some kind of control panel, but the symbols on it were alien, nothing like anything he'd ever seen. The creature was almost on him now, its breath hot on his neck. Jack dropped to his knees, his fingers flying over the panel. He didn't know what he was doing, but he had to try. He pressed a series of symbols at random, praying it would do something. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a loud whoosh, the barrier dissolved. Jack didn't waste a second. He leaped through the opening, rolling to his feet just as the creature slammed into the barrier, which had reappeared as quickly as it had vanished. The creature roared in frustration, its claws slashing at the energy wall, but it couldn't get through. Jack let out a shaky breath, his legs trembling with relief. "Too close," he muttered, clutching his injured arm. He turned to face the tower, its light now blindingly bright. "All right, tower, what's your deal?" As he stepped closer, the ground beneath him began to glow, and a voice echoed in his mind, a voice he recognized. It was the elder from the council. "Asterisk, you have passed the first test, Jack Thompson, but the true challenge lies ahead. Enter the tower, and you will find the answers you seek." Asterisk Jack swallowed hard, his heart still racing. "Answers, huh? About time." He took a deep breath and stepped into the tower, the light enveloping him like a warm embrace. But as the light faded, he found himself in a room unlike anything he'd ever seen. The walls were covered in shifting, glowing symbols, and in the center of the room was a pedestal with a single object on it, a small, crystalline orb that pulsed with a faint, golden light. Jack approached the pedestal, his curiosity outweighing his caution. As he reached out to touch the orb, the voice spoke again. "Asterisk, this is the key of Kronos. It holds the power to control time itself. But beware, Jack Thompson. With great power comes great danger." Asterisk Jack's hand hovered over the orb, his mind racing. This was it, the key to getting home. But as he wrapped his fingers around the orb, a sudden, searing pain shot through his body. He cried out, dropping to his knees as visions flooded his mind. Visions of destruction, of timelines collapsing, of worlds being erased. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the pain stopped. Jack gasped for breath, his hands trembling as he clutched the orb. The voice spoke again, softer this time. "Asterisk, the power is yours, Jack Thompson, but you must use it wisely. The fate of a universe depends on it." Asterisk Jack stared at the orb, his mind reeling. He had the power to control time, but at what cost? And more importantly, how was he supposed to get home? But before he could think of an answer, the room began to dissolve around him, the walls melting into a swirling vortex of light. Jack felt himself being pulled away, the orb still clutched tightly in his hand. And then, everything went black. When he opened his eyes, he was no longer in the tower. He was standing in a place that defied description, a place where time and space seemed to fold in on themselves. And standing before him was a figure he never expected to see. It was Emily, but something was wrong. She looked different, older, harder, her eyes filled with a sadness that made Jack's heart ache. And she wasn't alone. Behind her stood an army of beings, their forms shifting and changing like the creature he had faced. "Jack," Emily said, her voice trembling. "You have to stop. What you're about to do, it will destroy everything." Jack stared at her, his mind racing. "Emily, what are you talking about? What's going on?" But before she could answer, the ground beneath him began to shake, and the sky above him split open, revealing a swirling vortex of darkness. And Jack realized, with a sinking feeling in his chest, that this was only the beginning. The real battle was about to begin. Jack stood frozen, his eyes locked on Emily. She looked so different, older, wearier, her fiery red hair streaked with gray. The sadness in her green eyes cut deeper than any wound he'd ever felt. Behind her, the army of shifting beings loomed, their forms flickering like shadows in a storm. The ground beneath him trembled, and the sky above churned with a vortex of darkness that seemed to swallow the light. "Emily," Jack said, his voice cracking. "What's happening? What are you doing here?" Emily stepped forward, her movements slow and deliberate, as if every step pained her. "Jack, you don't understand. The orb you're holding, it's not just a key. It's a weapon. If you use it, you'll tear apart the fabric of time itself." Jack looked down at the crystalline orb in his hand, its golden light pulsing faintly. "I don't have a choice, Emily. I need to get home. I need to fix this." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "You can't fix this, Jack. Not like this. Every time you try to change the past, you create a new future, one that's worse than the last. I've seen it. I've lived it." Jack's heart pounded. "What are you talking about? How do you know all this?" Emily hesitated, her gaze dropping to the ground. "Because I've been here before, Jack. I've tried to save you. I try to stop this. But every time I do, it only gets worse. This is the only timeline where we have a chance to make things right." Jack's mind raced, trying to piece together what she was saying. "You're saying you've time traveled? You've been through this before?" Emily nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, and every time I try to change things, it ends in disaster. The last time, I lost you forever." Jack felt a lump form in his throat. "Emily, Before he could finish, the ground shook violently, and the vortex above them grew larger, its darkness spreading like ink across the sky. The army of beings behind Emily began to advance, their forms shifting and merging into something monstrous. Emily's eyes widened in panic. "Jack, you have to let go of the orb. If you don't, it's going to consume everything. Please, trust me." Jack stared at the orb, his hand trembling. He wanted to believe her, but the thought of giving up the only way home was unbearable. "Emily, I can't just leave you here. I can't leave this place without knowing the truth." Emily stepped closer, her voice desperate. "The truth is that some things can't be changed, Jack. Some things have to stay the way they are. If you use that orb, you'll destroy everything. Our world, this world, every world. Please, Jack, let it go." Jack's grip on the orb tightened, his mind torn between fear and hope. He looked into Emily's eyes, searching for answers, but all he found was pain. "What if there's another way?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "What if we can fix this without destroying everything?" Emily shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "There is no other way, Jack. This is the only choice we have." The vortex above them roared, its darkness spreading faster now. The army of beings was almost upon them, their forms twisting into something unrecognizable. Jack's heart raced as he realized he was out of time. "Jack!" Emily screamed, her voice filled with desperation. "Do it now." With a deep breath, Jack made his choice. He raised the orb high above his head, its golden light flaring brightly. "I'm sorry, Emily," he whispered, "but I have to try." And with that, he brought the orb down, slamming it into the ground with all his strength. The world exploded in a blinding flash of light, and everything went silent. When Jack opened his eyes, he was no longer standing in the strange, shifting plane. He was back in the lab, the familiar hum of machines filling the air. Emily stood beside him, her eyes wide with shock. "Jack?" she whispered, her voice trembling. What did you do?" Jack looked down at his hands, the orb now gone. I think I fixed it," he said, his voice filled with disbelief. But before he could say more, the ground beneath them began to shake, and the air filled with a deafening roar. The walls of the lab began to crack, and the machines sparked and hissed. Emily grabbed his arm, her grip tight. "Jack, what did you do?" Jack's heart sank as he realized the truth. He hadn't fixed anything. He had made it worse. And now, the consequences were coming. But that's a story for another time. For now, Jack and Emily had to survive and figure out how to undo what had been done. Because the world they knew was falling apart, and the real battle was just beginning. The lab was collapsing around them, the walls cracking and groaning under the strain of some unseen force. Sparks flew from the machines, and the air was thick with the smell of burning metal. Emily gripped Jack's arm, her nails digging into his skin as she shouted over the chaos. "Jack, what did you do? What did you do?" Jack's mind raced, his heart pounding in his chest. I thought I could fix it. I thought I could bring us back, make everything right." Emily's eyes were wide with fear and anger. "You didn't fix anything, Jack. You broke it. You broke everything." The ground beneath them shook violently, and a deafening roar filled the air. Jack stumbled, catching himself on a nearby console. He looked up, his eyes widening in horror as he saw the vortex from the other dimension tearing through the fabric of reality, its darkness spreading like a cancer. "We have to stop it," Jack shouted, his voice barely audible over the noise. "We have to close the portal." Emily shook her head, her face pale. "It's too late, Jack. The orb, it's too powerful. We can't control it." Jack's mind raced, desperate for a solution. He glanced at the console, his eyes landing on a familiar interface, the same one they had used to open the dimensional bridge. "What if we reverse it?" he shouted. "What if we use the lab's energy to close the portal?" Emily's eyes widened. "It could work, but it's risky. If we mess up, we could destroy the entire lab. And ourselves." Jack clenched his fists, his determination hardening. "We don't have a choice, Emily. It's the only way." Emily hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "All right, let's do it." They worked quickly, their movements frantic but precise. Jack typed furiously on the console, rerouting the lab's energy to the dimensional bridge. Emily stood beside him, her fingers flying over a holographic screen as she adjusted the settings. "We're almost there," Jack shouted, his voice strained. "Just a little more." The vortex roared, its darkness spreading faster now. The walls of the lab began to crumble, and the air was filled with the sound of shattering glass and twisting metal. Jack's hands trembled as he entered the final sequence, his heart pounding in his chest. "Now!" he shouted, slamming his hand down on the console. The lab's energy surged, flowing into the dimensional bridge with a blinding flash of light. The vortex shuddered, its darkness recoiling as the energy forced it back. Jack and Emily shielded their eyes, the light so bright it felt like it was burning through their skin. For a moment, everything was still. The vortex shrank, its darkness fading as the energy consumed it. Jack let out a shaky breath, his heart racing. "It's working," he whispered. "It's working." But then, without warning, the energy surged again, the console sparking and hissing. Emily's eyes widened in panic. "Jack, it's overloading. We have to shut it down." Jack's hands flew over the console, trying to stabilize the energy flow, but it was too late. The console exploded in a burst of light and heat, throwing him and Emily to the ground. When the light faded, the vortex was gone. The lab was silent, the only sound the faint hum of the remaining machines. Jack groaned, pushing himself up off the ground. His ears were ringing, and his vision was blurred, but he was alive. "Emily," he croaked, his voice hoarse. "Emily, are you okay?" Emily stirred beside him, her face pale and streaked with soot. I'm okay," she whispered, her voice trembling. "But Jack, look." Jack followed her gaze, his heart sinking as he saw the damage. The lab was in ruins, the walls cracked and blackened, the machines sparking and smoking. But worse than that was the console. The interface they had used to control the dimensional bridge was completely destroyed. We did it," Jack said, his voice filled with disbelief. "We closed the portal." Emily nodded, her eyes filled with relief and something else. Something darker. "But at what cost, Jack?" "The lab, the machine, it's all gone. We can't open another portal. We can't go back." Jack's heart sank as he realized the truth. They had saved the world, but they had lost everything else. The machine, the lab, their chance to fix the past, it was all gone. But as he looked at Emily, he saw something in her eyes, a spark of hope. Maybe this is how it's supposed to be," she said softly. "Maybe we were never meant to change the past. Maybe we were meant to learn from it." Jack nodded, his mind racing with the weight of her words. Yeah, maybe you're right. But as they stood there, surrounded by the ruins of the lab, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end. The vortex was gone, but the orb, the key of Kronos, was still out there, somewhere. And he knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning, because the power to control time was too great to be lost forever. And someone, somewhere would find it. And when they did, the real battle would begin. But that's a story for another time. For now, Jack and Emily had each other, and a future to rebuild. And as they walked out of the lab, hand in hand, they knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. Because some things were worth fighting for, no matter the cost.